McConnell, did I do it justice?
She stepped away for just a second.
All right. So here's the cover.
I'll be back.
Oh, wow.
Now the reason I have this is because I was Kingdom Chronicler at the time, so I have copies of all the issues I was Chronicler for. But yeah, it was one of the very few Black Star covers we had done in color.
That's fantastic. And I really wish I could get my hands on those.
You know, we have almost a full thing of Black Stars that I've been thinking we should get rid of. Now we shouldn't. We should get rid of. Now we shouldn't. I will look through and see if
Newsletters,
they could come your way.
Well, you see, you're talking to old Bjornsburg people, and our approach to dealing with things is a little more aggressive than what you're used to right now.
Yeah.
Well, you were also diplomatic to a fault. I put in there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can scan this in if you want a copy of the cover.
I have to get the permission of the author to republish it.
The author's dead.
The author has passed away, but Thordis is his. Yeah, all of his copyrighted stuff belongs to her. So
then I would have to get a release from her, and
you may have one from her.
You might have one.
I do not.
Okay, she'll do it. She doesn't mind. She loves sharing his stuff.
One? It doesn't have to be piecemeal, right?
It can be either. I'm happy to get any release from anybody who's willing to give me one.
Because Ragnar did a ton of work, so.
Now, what was Ragnar's? This is going to sound weird, but what was his last name? Because there's a couple Ragnars, and I want to.
Ulfgarson.
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 Okay. I don't know if that's the Ragnar that I've spoken to somebody about building a page for them or not.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
But it only has one story on it. So one of these days I would like to do a Onsteoran story core prompt of tell me about a fallen star of Onsteora. Tell me about someone that we should know about in the current day that may have passed before, but everybody's like, no, don't do that. It's depressing. So
no, do it. It's your history. We'll tell you about Chorus.
Okay.
He'll tell you about Chorus.
Like
I don't think it's depressing. I think it's cathartic because I've lost a lot of friends over the years, and talking about them is the best way to remember them.
I mean, giving them word fame is the medieval approach to,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a period of time that up in the north that was called the Year of Sorrows.
Yeah.
And that's because there were more funerals than there were SCA events. And people were seeing each other at funerals more often than they were seeing each other at events, because we lost somebody every single month. And the first...
Well, we just recently lost two right together, like a week and a half apart. It was,
yeah.
Last year's Samhain in Eldrin Hills was really kind of grim because they had a lot of deaths.
But that doesn't change the fact that word fame makes them live on.
That is very much my belief. I'm the daughter of a genealogist, so bringing those stories to life, recording those stories, that's why I took this job. But I've been told that sometimes my approach of tell me all the things can be a little abrasive to those who are still mourning. So I try not to, I try and walk that very delicate line.
I think you'll find that people down here are more than happy to talk about, like Emrys and Romwald both just passed away, and I think you'll find most people are really happy to share things about those two guys.
I'm going to give you a segue here. Your theme is an act of courage, right? You want us to
tell
an act of courage?
Yes.
Tell of an act of courage. Tell of an act of courage.
Well, I was actually going to offer to read a chronicle, but I don't know if it has anything to do with courage.
That's fine.
Read the chronicle anyway.
Okay, so I've told Zubeda, how do you say it again? Tell me how you.
It's Zubeda.
Zubeda.
Yes.
I told you I would send you two chronicles. Well, I actually found more than that, but here's the one. Here's one of the ones I was thinking of. And by the way, I put my wiki submission in, and it was harrowing, and hated me and spit it out 3 times, and it told me I couldn't read the thing that say I'm not a machine, but it did say it finally went through.
When did you send it?
About an hour ago.
Okay. This is going to sound really, really dumb, but what's your mundane name?
Lori Vickers.
Then I got it. I just wanted to make sure. I am so terribly bad with names and faces and SCA names adding a level of complication.
If it came through 3 times, that's your website's fault. It's not my fault.
It did. I have all 3.
Oh, it kept telling me the file was too big with my arms. So
that may very well be the case.
And it also said that I didn't read the capture thing right.
Okay. I've got your arms. I don't have a portrait of you, but I have your arms.
I didn't put a portrait in. We don't need to have that up there.
Okay. Entirely up
All
to
right. But I will read this. This is called A Chronicle of Elsie Defender and it was by me when I was Lady Bryony, Bloslock. Early in the morning of September 3rd, Annus Aetatis 22, Laird Connell McNaughton, the Honorable Lord Rombader Buask, who is one of the ones we just lost, and I set forth upon the Bloslavian cargo ship over Osculls for the Elsie Defender tournament. We had fair winds, thanks to Rombald, I'm sure, and arrived without mishap. Elsie has no proper longship docks, so we had an unfortunate incident while unloading. All of Master Ragnar's gear was dropped into the shallows. We were forced to hire extra help to recover this gear, but Ragnar later made good on our expenditure. We made immediately for the Viking encampment and lashed my sails and oars into a shelter for the coming days. Connell then ventured up to the Celtic camp of Mistress Bramlin and their Majesties Seamus and Carlana, where he and Mistress Maury intended to stay. Viscount Randall and Viscountess Constance had already set up in the Saxon enclave, where they would be joined by Lord Jesric later. Rombalder and I laid out the Viking Garth arrangements and found that our friends, Baron Olaf and his lady Angelina, had arrived from Namron and encamped with us. Across the road, we spotted a large barricaded fort, which we shortly ascertained to be the Roman army led by Equus Camerinus, who was in the process of constructing roads. We also noticed a small Arabic camp near the Saxons under the auspices of one Lord Daoud. I had heard tell that Far Easterners were also expected, but if present, they had in fabled subtle manner well disguised the fact. Throughout the evening, each encampment grew, but we were about to give up hope on others from our fair barony when at last they arrived, many muttering imprecations about Bloslagen sailing charts and the like. In all, Mistress Maury, Erlinda Kimrith, Master Ragnar, Lord Erlin, Lady Thordis, Lady Winifreda, the Lady Kirsten, Jorund, and my own son Rolf were at last ensconced in their respective places. Many Norse kin and friends, long unseen, arrived in our camp also. Master Ivar Battlescald and Sir Lasgard Aglanar were among them. At last the arrivals slowed, and I settled down to rest to the resonant tones of Ragnar regaling Ivar with his recent tales of his visits to Seawind. Saturday's dawn broke, and we all slept on, oblivious. When I did arise, it was to find that Thordis had created the traditional Scottish breakfast of oatmeal, which I suggested should be sent up to the Celts. Soon we heard that the list would begin, so Sir Randall and Connell made their way up to Inner, along with 100 others. The list was long, but both our Bjornsburg fighters showed their prowess well. Many of our Norse folk busied themselves with discovering who and what was at which campsite. The list ended with a melee led on the one hand by Duke Inman, on the other by Count Hector, the 2 undefeated fighters in the list. Duke Inman's fighters won the day, and thus he was declared defender of Elsie. The Norse and any guest who wandered in then partook of the marvelous stew which Thordis had concocted in her Thordiskatla, which is the cauldron. The king was at this time present in camp and being held, so to speak, captive audience to Ragnar's tale of recent occurrences at Seawind. So Maury and I, having heard this tale, went to espy what trouble might be found. Upon concoction of several plans for later that eve, we returned to find that the crown had called all to assemble, i.e. Ralph came and asked, "Hey Ma, we going to court?" But when we arrived at the gathering, it was only to find that Ragnar, Rombalder, Ivar, and I could not say how many others had placed themselves upwind of the populace and were engaged in an exchange of commentaries of the parting variety. As soon as was reasonable, several of us made good our departure from this most odoriferous of courts. 4 went to visit the Roman campsite, sadly depleted of guards, and practice a few relocation techniques on the road signs there. 3 visited the famous Celtic arch up the way, and it became a Nordic arch for a brief time. Some were just in the process of arranging the Saxon shields in a more aesthetic locale when the king came and said that this raiding must cease. We were gathered here in peace, and he would not see ill feelings arise from simple acts of amusement. All agreed that other forms of amusement would be found. Returning to camp, we found that many Norse from the northern climes of Namron and Eldern Hills were still arriving, so more meetings and greetings took place. While a formal feast for the royalty and defenders of Elfsey was served, the Norse gathered our dancers and musicians and taught all who had learned the Ormenlange and the kissing dance. Then our camp leader, Ragnar, went to dine with the Romans, and many bards, skalds, and storytellers made their way to the camp to entertain us, and we likewise had skalds that visited others or performed at the camp. I do believe that all who attended the gathering were present at one time or another within our camp that evening. Many coins of gold and red changed hands that eve, as the most impressive were rewarded for their talents. Lady Marjorie de Bray collected so many tokens of reward that Elfsey proclaimed her their new court bard. Sometime quite late in the evening, King Seamus declared that nothing after dark had happened at all, so my memories must in truth be merely dreams. Sunday morning brought yet another full day, and our Bjornsburg people rose ready to enjoy it. Lord Jusric won the archery shoot, and Lord Connell won the spear throw. Each was presented with gifts in recognition of his skill. Duke Lloyd and Duchess Joycelyn brought their recent progeny, a girl babe, to visit. 2 lists were fought, and an auction of crafts was held. The populace was once again assembled to award gifts and largesse for worthy accomplishments. Directly following this, I made my way to the Two Sisters Tavern to beg a tankard of water. This tavern was in the hire of the Roman encampment, though its mistress was herself one Lady Caitlin, a Celt. She made me welcome, and as we spoke, I found that she had had little patronage from the Romans who had hired the tavern. It crossed my mind that this was a great waste, and that if she had the Norse as patrons, her beer would have long since been sold. I brought the matter to Ragnar's attention, and forthwith the Norse, Saxons, and Celts agreed to buy up the beer. This we did, and as all know that the Arabs do not touch beer, it remained that the only folk who would wish to have a beer in the Roman tavern and could not were the Romans themselves. This pleased us, the tavern mistress, and her Lord Master Pepin, all no end. Later, Ragnar, Eber, and the others were heard carrying the beer through the Roman camp and singing, "The Vikings brought the beer, and while the Romans were asleep." This really happened. A gathering was held that eve at the Celtic camp, and a count of all red tokens was taken so that the favorite camp might be known. The Roman camp had received the most recognition, but the Norse and Celts banded together in alliance, cemented by gifts and marriage ties, and received a present of beer from the Shire of Elfsey, with which we were most pleased. Dancers from the Middle East came forward, and I was much impressed and gave gold so that Amber and Delphina would dance for our camp for Rolf later, which they did. An early retiring was soon in order to rest for our journey home. Breaking our fast, loading the ships, and much last-minute visiting occupied our Monday morning. A brief but strong squall served to rapidly send most on their separate paths for home. My highest regard is given to all those who worked with and joined in all the fun of Elfsey Defenders.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So that was, I believe, over Labor Day, so it was a 3-day event. It was a long event.
Yeah.
And it was with the 5 camps, and yes, we
I understand why they objected to your thoughtful redecoration efforts.
Yeah, it was probably one of the closest times I ever came to actually getting banished. Darn it, and it didn't succeed.